If you are at any stage in your career, you're probably looking for shortcuts. Quickest way to get me from 0 to 1. What's the quickest way to get me a job? What's the quickest way to get me a case study? What's the quickest way to get me a raise, a promotion, whatever it is? Well, I got news for you guys out there. Unfortunately, there are no shortcuts. And I know that's a tough pill to swallow. What's up, UX fam? How's your mom and them? Welcome to another episode of Beyond UX Design. I'm Jeremy. If you're new here, welcome. I am super excited to have you. The Beyond UX Design shop, it's open, ladies and gentlemen. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop to pick up some big, beautiful art prints of some of my favorite UX and software-related quotes. Get yourself some digital downloads so you can print them yourself. Pick up your copy of Beyond UX Design, master your craft beyond pixels and prototypes. Get free shipping on all orders over $30, and use the code LISTENER to get 10% off your entire order. Just head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop and get your print on. This week's episode is brought to you by Mento Design Academy, where it's not just about learning UX design, it's about discovering your unique path in it. And Mento inspires students to use their passion as a driving force in their learning, and that is exactly what I've experienced firsthand as a mentor. I've been fortunate enough to guide students who are exploring concepts that they're truly passionate about. It's not just about following a curriculum, it's about shaping that curriculum around what excites each student. And seeing my mentees grow, apply their passions, and craft portfolios that are genuinely them, it's been one of the most rewarding experiences of my career. So if you're looking for a UX course that's as unique as you are, check out Mento Design Academy. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/mento. And just for my listeners, use the promo code BeyondUX200 to get $200 off the course. So join Mento and let your passions lead your learning journey. And if you haven't done it already, please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. If you are regular here and you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would really appreciate a 5-star review. That would help me out so much more than you can imagine. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, and Marty for all of their support. And if you want to join these fine folks and many others and help keep the show independent and ad-free, you'll get rough transcripts and exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, including episodes before they're even released. And you can get instant access right now for as little as $5 a month. And for more information on how you can support the show and help more people find out about what we're doing here, make sure to check out beyonduxdesign.com/support. And of course, if you think the show is worth sharing, then I would love it if you told some friends. So, if you are at any stage in your career, you're probably looking for shortcuts. Unfortunately, there are no shortcuts. And I know that's a tough pill to swallow, but I've got my good buddy Florian Boelter on the show today. He's got a lot of experience dealing with this, and we're going to talk all about that. I'm so excited to have him on. Florian's a former product manager turned product designer. Came from the dark side to the light side. Currently, he's working as a staff product designer at Juro, a Series B legal tech, helping the world to agree more. He's also the founder of Open Doors, a job board and newsletter specifically made for junior designers and those early in their career. So Florian, welcome to Beyond UX Design. I am so excited to have you on. How's it going, man?
Hi, Jeremy. Really good to be here. Thank you. Thanks for that nice intro. Oh, good. Hope the same goes for you.
No, I'm doing really well. And I'm excited to have a German on the show because I just recently started working with the team in Germany. So I started learning German on Duolingo. I'm in, I don't know. I'm like 4 lessons deep. I've learned how to say tschüss. I've learned how to say bear and beer, mutter and broder and tochter and put them together in a sentence. So that's been really fun. It's funny because I was trying to learn a while ago, Hungarian and Polish. And it like fried my brain. And it's really nice to actually, coming from English, which is a Germanic language, to learn German and actually being able to read and pronounce some of the words it's been fun. So anyway, maybe later we'll have a quick German lesson.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Let's do it. Awesome, man. All right. So Florian, I'm so excited to have you on. I know I read that brief little bio, but tell us a little bit about you and how'd you come to this idea that there are no shortcuts?
Yeah. Okay. Happy to. Yeah, as the intro mentioned, I'm a former product manager. I was a product manager for a year. Then I quit that shit. No, not really. I did actually enjoy the kind of like function in it. But I realized this was my first real exposure to design, like in an actual business setting. And I just realized that is so much more what I want to do with my life and like what I want to do. And people might not there. might nod or shake their heads right now, but that just felt like the perfect fit. And I haven't really looked back ever since, although those skills obviously are still with me and I actually get to exercise them on a regular basis in my job. That's why my passion is design, really. So I transitioned 5 years
love it,
ago,
man.
roughly 5 years ago. And yeah, that's kind of where I first encountered this. So 5 years ago, that is 2019. So we're right after this kind of like boom in the industry where like literally every company would hire a
Right.
UX designer and you would go and do
Right.
your boot camp and come out of it and have offers on the table. That's a bit exaggerated,
Hmm.
right? But like you wouldn't be long out there if your portfolio was
Yeah.
at least like halfway decent. And to be fair, I didn't even know about this like at the time when I transitioned from product manager to design. I only learned about this later. But I think even in 2024, you can still feel the effect of this boom because a lot of people come into the industry thinking, oh, this is like good money here. And it seems very
Hmm.
easy to do. You just got to do a boot camp, right? And off you go and you get your job. We all know that both the people just starting out now and the people more experienced, more senior, we all know those times are over and it's not looking like they're coming back.
Man.
People like struggle, right? And like they struggle to
Yeah.
figure out what to do now. And I think that kind of leads us to the no shortcuts topic because that's what a lot of people are looking at. And I think they should because there are none.
Exactly. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned, not funny, I guess it's sad that the early 20s, 2020 pandemic hit and startups were hiring like crazy. Nobody was in an office, so things were remote. So jobs opened up all over the place. You could apply for jobs literally anywhere, working from your home. Over time, those jobs started to slowly away. Layoffs are crazy. There are obviously still jobs available now, but now you've got just tons of people applying for the same role. And of course, humans, we get impatient and we want to have immediate gratification. And so everyone's always online looking for the shortcuts. And I'm just curious from your perspective, what's been your experience seeing maybe people you've been mentoring or coaching or even yourself personally chasing those shortcuts? What are the pitfalls of that? What happens when you start to chase the shortcut? What's the negative output of that?
Yeah, so I think the immediate output is like frustration. If you apply those shortcuts you seem to have found,
Yeah.
you obviously expect a result, and that result's not going to come. So, best case, you're going to get rejections. Worst case, you're just going to get ghosted because no one's even
Mm.
taking you seriously. And I think it comes in form of thinking, okay, I'm going to do one case study, maybe a second one. Or I just do some UI screens, put them on a website or on Behance and go out into the world and I'm going to get offers. That's
Right.
probably not even going to net you a response these days.
Right. Exactly.
So that's the kind of like immediate thing. But like longer term, and that's I think even worse, like both for your like for your mental health, but also for
Hmm.
like potentially even your finances, depending on like how how you're set up. The
Yeah.
thing is you waste time on things that actually don't get you anywhere. Because if
Yeah.
that's the way you do it, right? And you go out and then you just multiply with that like absolutely subpar material, you're wasting time you could spend on honing your skills, honing your craft, and actually building something that would get you somewhere. And then when you realize that, then you have to start over. And this is like a major frustration and sometimes feels, yeah, a complete like pivot or shift in people's lives. I've definitely experienced a few kind of very desperate people there that realized that everything they did up to until this point, chasing these shortcuts, was for nothing. And that hits hard, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I think about this, maybe is not the best analogy, but I think about as someone driving a car, right? We can get in a car, turn it on, drive around from point A to point B, and it can get us there. But the minute something goes wrong with the car, you don't know how to fix it because you never any of the inner workings of the car. It is not maybe not the best analogy because not everybody can become a mechanic. But it's like one of those things like in your job, like maybe the shortcuts help you when everything is happy path. How often is UX work or software work in general happy path? There's constantly just like things being thrown at you. I talk about VUCA and volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, and all that stuff. And if you're just like expecting everything to work out perfectly the entire time, the minute something goes wrong, if you've taken shortcuts your entire career, you have no idea how to actually get to the root of the problem and solve it and move forward. And I don't know, maybe I need a better analogy, but that's just like my big thing too. It's like you said, it's all just been for nothing. Yeah, I love that. One of the things I'm curious about, and this is something that maybe we could talk, I don't know, actually, the more I think about this, maybe this is for whatever. Okay. This is a beautiful part of post-production. We can edit this part out. I was going to think about social media and stuff. I think that's actually, because there's like the misinformation piece. I want to talk about that last. All right, we're going to hold off on that. You could be thinking about it and then we'll hold off on it. But yeah, the sentiment that I hear a lot is interesting because as the job market, you have this downturn, right? You mentioned a minute ago, everything was great a few years ago. Jobs, you finish your boot camp, here's a job, you get a job, you get a job, everybody gets a job. Now you get this sentiment, people are starting to get burnt out, right? I did everything I'm supposed to do. Why didn't I get what? Why didn't I get a raise? Why didn't I get a promotion? Why didn't I get blah, blah, blah? Why didn't I get a job offer? And I'm just curious, like from your perspective here, dealing with this yourself or maybe people that you've worked with, what are some ways to get past that? Because I think this is the reason, the heart of the problem, why people are constantly searching for those shortcuts. They want, like I said, that immediate gratification. It doesn't happen and they get frustrated and just want to get over it. I'm supposed to do, why didn't I blank? I'm curious, what do you say to people, or what did you do to yourself maybe? What did you do yourself when you were in this situation? Trying to get past that to just say, I got to learn stuff. The shortcuts aren't helping.
Double down on that stuff. That's the first thing, right? Especially if it's, for example, a skill gap that you have, like where it's really clear, okay, like I'm getting rejected all the time. And you gotta just find out what the problem is first. That's probably the very first thing before you even double down. Probably, yeah, it's better. Because that's one of the things, for example, I see with mentees. They come to me, they show me the portfolio, and I can see there's probably some work to be done here, but I'm like not always immediately sure like where exactly the problem lies. So one thing that I tell them is get some analytics. Let's see what people drop off. Let's take a look at the roles you apply to and what they ask for. And then let's see how we can like make sense of it by looking at the behavior people display on your portfolio and where maybe are gaps. And so you get to the problem, but it doesn't have to be the job search or your portfolio. It could also be your development in a role, right? Like you're waiting for that promotion, it's not happening. So try to find out why. In that case, it might be easier. It might just be talk to your manager very candidly and like actually ask, what do I suck at so much that you won't promote me? And sometimes it isn't even a skill, right? Like sometimes it's phase the companies in, they don't have budget to promote on a regular basis or whatever. But they're trying to find out because that, for example, is something you can do very little about, right? If the economics don't fit and there's just no promotion in for you there for at least another year or something, but it will still help you to plan your next step. You will get clarity and you will not sit there and ask yourself, why? Is it me? What's the problem? You have to communicate and try to get to the ground of it. So it's the very first essential step. And sometimes I get people that say, yeah, but I did everything I was supposed to. What were you supposed to do? And then they tell me very shallow things that kind of come from like common beliefs that you find on LinkedIn or Instagram or something about what you need to do in order to. But those are there's always generic advice, right? So it never applies to a particular situation. So you've got to find out for yourself what in your situation might be the problem. And I'm saying that as if it was easy. It isn't always very easy. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's literally just talking to one person for 10 minutes or something. So go and do that. But sometimes it involves a few more steps, obviously. And then once you did that, double down on it. Like, for example, one thing that came like very easy to me were like strategic skills, like everything I was like, and also technical things. Like that was something I already brought into my design career. Like I was already quite good at that. So there was no need for me immediately to like focus on that. But my visual skills, like I never had any kind of, I had to do design on a visual level, so to speak. I think the last thing for me was like a major in art in high school. And that was at that point, I think 10 years ago or something. So there was a lot for me to catch up on visual hierarchy and all the different laws that we have when it comes to the visual part and all of these things. And I just doubled down on that stuff. And I'm actually still working on that. That's still, I think, my biggest weakness. I think generally I'm a generalist and I do everything like at good level based on my kind of level of where I'm at in my career. But still, I feel like this is the thing were said. So I saw that and I just doubled down, learned all that stuff, practiced in Figma or whatever. Like back then, it was even still Sketch sometimes. Learned everything, tried to produce as much UI as I could to just double down and get that quality up in my portfolio. And lo and behold, like that helped. Like, internship came in, and then in that internship, I had another opportunity to level that up. And then the first interviews came in, and then the first offers came in. And so that works. But obviously, you have to first get to the point where you realize that I suck at this. That's the thing I'm not good at yet. And but because people very often think I do this boot camp and I will all have all the skills that I need, for example, or I do this, I don't know, learn a development in my role. Like I use my budget, buy a book and do a couple of things and then I'm set for the next level.
Yeah.
That's often like misleading. And that's actually this kind of subconscious wish for shortcuts, I think.
Yeah.
Because we tend to naturally gravitate towards that. I do that myself every day. Like obviously I try to do things as easily as possible. Like I try to spend as like a little time as possible on stuff that I don't truly enjoy. So I look for shortcuts. But yeah, I think with your career, especially in design, it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah. As you're saying this, I'm thinking about this idea of treating yourself like a product you're trying to sell. And essentially that is what we're doing, right? We're selling our labor to a company who wants to pay us for our time. Even if we're full-time, we're not consulting, that's still a transaction there. You're only as valuable that company is willing to pay for that service that you can provide. When you're talking about this, what I'm thinking in my head is you went and you found where there were gaps, just like you would any other product you're trying to build. You don't have product market fit. You need to find the features that fit the market. So if that's the case and we're treating ourselves like that, we need to think about ourselves. What's the product market fit? Where am I trying to go? Being strategic with your career. Where do I want to go? What do those people want? What can I do? Where are the gaps? And what do I need to learn to get there?
Yeah.
And that's something that I think when we think about, you mentioned boot camps, like I hate to rip on boot camps. I work with a boot camp. And I love the fact that you can get in there relatively cheaply, get a curriculum and a plan and start. But one of the things that I always have to stress with my mentees is you are not done in 6 months. And that is, I hate to blame boot camps and say boot camps are shortcuts and stuff, but because I think it's a great foundation. But that is like one of the biggest thing is that idea that you've got to understand that you're getting a foundation. And then when you are done, there will be gaps. And where can you find the additional things and learn those things? So I'm curious from your perspective, you said you didn't go to boot camp or anything, right? You're self-taught, right?
I did actually go to a boot camp as well. Yeah.
You did? Okay. So,
yeah.
Okay. So you don't need to name it, but I'm curious, when you were done, how did you approach that? Is that sort of one of those things where it took you a little bit of time to realize there are a bunch of gaps here? This was maybe, I was trying to use this as a shortcut, but it wasn't sufficient. I'm curious how you found, first, how'd you come to that realization? And then from there, how did you realize like you had to go fill the gaps? And then from there, what did you do? That's a big question, by the way.
Yeah, I'm going to give the dickhead answer first because I just know this stuff. No, I think I'm reflecting a lot. Like that's kind of part of my personality, of my traits, I think. So even before I started that boot camp, I already reflected on my skills and like on what do I need to learn here in order to succeed. So I didn't have deep insights into the market or into the industry at that point, but I did see the kind of differences in UI. Like those were also the distinctions in my bootcamp. Like you had to pick a major, so to speak, like a main course. And so I had to make the decision, do I pick UX or do I pick UI? And at that point I reflected, okay, like everything that I see in the curriculum for UX, a lot of it is familiar to me. Some of it I've even practiced in my last role a little bit as a product manager, whilst the UI bit was like entirely new. And at that point back then, I already saw from the outside that there was this kind of gravitational shift towards like product design and a more holistic kind of role, which I, by the way, also enjoy very much. So I knew that. And so I saw, okay, this is the stuff I don't know. So I got to learn that. It seems essential. So I got to learn that and make sure that I catch up on it. So reflect. Like really think about like in past roles or like in university, wherever you come from, doesn't matter if you come from a bootcamp university or whatever, because it's the same for university graduates, really. I do the same with them if they are my mentees, like it's the same process. just think about which courses did you, first of all, enjoy. That's also a big part
Mm.
of it. It's not only about what you can do, also what do you enjoy doing. For example, I like I can distill data, I think quite well, and like really work well with data, but I would never go into a research like only role because I don't enjoy it enough. So think about that. But just generally think about what did you get good grades in, like where did you get good feedback or what felt natural to you doing it. And what were the things where you were like, fuck, how do I do this? And then like
Mm.
very unsure when you handed it in, like how people are gonna perceive it and like what kind of feedback you're gonna get. Those are the things to look at first. So I think that's very important to look at and really think about. And then when I came out of the boot camp, I had that expectation that it's not going to be that hard. It might not
Mm.
be like a walk in the park because I never try to never approach things like they are just going to be handed to me. Like I never
Right.
assume
Yeah.
that for anything really. And then, but then even with that kind of mentality, I was a little underwhelmed by, I would say by the response, but there was no response in the first place. There was nothing really.
Yeah.
And that, think about that was 2020 where everything was booming. So
Mm.
we were already in a market where I was actually quite dealt good cards, I'd say. But yeah, still nothing. So went back and obviously I had a mentor, so that helped massively to accelerate the thing. So if someone like early in their career is listening, I can't overstate how important it can be to have someone on your side that helps you navigate these things because you can get lost in it.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, at that person, and we figured it out together and we looked at things, what like objectively in my portfolio, like what's the weakest thing? Like without judging it, what's the weakest
Yeah.
part of it? The visuals. So, okay, let's go revisit those case studies, see what type of things we can enhance or I can enhance. And what do I need to learn in order to do this? And then, yeah, I had a plan and I was able to go through it step by step, learn all that stuff, to practice again, and then make it better. And that's what I
Yeah,
did.
I love that, dude. And you mentioned something too. I think is worth highlighting as we are talking about shortcuts is mentors. It's so funny because I get messages like this all the time. Will you be my mentor? It's just that simple to just will you be my mentor? It's this weird little dynamic here. I am master, you are student, but like we're gonna hang out on like a mountain somewhere and just all day I'm gonna mentor you. It's just an interesting sort of question. And to me, that's like an example of one of these shortcuts. Instead of going out and trying to build relationships with people, there should never even really be a conversation like or a question, will you be my mentor? Like it should just be a relationship that evolves over time. And I don't want to fault like places like ADP list because I don't think ADP list is necessarily the root cause of this. They're providing a great service, but I think the way that people use services like ADP list are probably not as helpful as they could be, because you could use a source like a place like ADP list to find those relationships, but it's not going to be as simple as one 30-minute phone call with somebody over Zoom or whatever. And anyway, I don't know if you have any thoughts there about, because you mentioned the importance of finding a mentor. I'm curious when it comes to avoiding shortcuts as it relates to finding a mentor. You had one, I guess, through your boot camp, but do you have any advice for people who might be thinking a service like ADP List is the place to go? That's probably a shortcut that is probably not going to be helpful at the end of the day. What would be a great way, like a real way, to find mentors that can
Okay.
help you with this?
Yeah, it's a very good one. I'm glad we were talking about that because so sometimes I get messages, people on LinkedIn mostly, because I'm not on ADP list myself. I try to do
Mm,
mentoring, I try to steer that myself and who's
yeah.
gonna book and everything. People come to me and can you give me advice on like how to get traction or like how to get interviews or can you basically tell me how I can get a job? And I'm like, yeah, I can, but this won't be like a paragraph I write. This will be like a process and it'll take weeks or even months. And we're going to have to work together to get there. And I won't be able to share any secrets with you because there are none. Or
Yeah.
well, they aren't secrets like it, but I will share knowledge with you that you might not have. But
Hmm.
I won't share any kind of like industry secret that is just very hidden and only senior people know about or something like that.
Yeah. Some
So
kind of esoteric thing, which is
and
the secret knowledge and yeah,
exactly, the
exactly. It
holy
doesn't exist.
grail. Yeah, the holy grail of getting a job. Yeah, no, that doesn't exist. So I tell people, in order to really help you, like I can give you some general advice on what the industry is like right now, or like what most companies would be looking for. And also looking at your portfolio, I can give you some top level advice and whatever. It's cool. Usually even do that for free sometimes. But that's not what's going to get you a job. And that's not even what's going to
Mm.
get you going from 0 interviews to 1 interview, because it always comes down to what particular situation you are in, like what you need, what type of person you are, what kind of background you have, and all of these things. So it's highly personal and it just requires someone working with you. So the first thing when you're looking for mentorship is, do not expect this to be a one-off transaction. That's if you book someone for one session, no matter if it's on ADP list or if you pay for it, you can pay $1,000 for a mentoring session and it's
Mm.
not going to get you,
Yeah.
it's probably not going to get you anywhere substantially. If you pay $1,000, I'd expect at least some a little bit or something. But anyway, like
Yeah.
no matter what,
It's all
because
what you put into it.
yeah, but you have to get away from that image. Like you have to see this as a long-term kind of thing, or at least a longer-term kind of thing to get somewhere, because you need to first sit down and analyze a little bit, then craft a strategy, and then execute that strategy. So yeah, expect that. Then make sure that you find a good fit. So there's a lot of designers out there that offer mentorship. Some do it more professionally, some do it a bit more casually to get experience with it. I'm generally glad that there is such a wide offering these days. Like I think
Mm.
before ADP list came around, it was probably very hard and probably also extremely expensive to find a mentor. Now you have a much bigger pool to source from, which is great. But obviously, the people who do it for free, they are usually less likely to commit to you as an individual for a longer time. So
Right.
I would
Right.
probably consider to look for someone who seems like they're interested in making this a longer term kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and with that, you got to pick someone who's has a background that's similar to yours, maybe. So they've been through maybe similar things and they might have a similar profile to you. So, for example, if you're a career changer and you come from a marketing background, maybe you find someone that came from a marketing background a couple of years ago as well. That can always help. It doesn't necessarily need to help, but I think it's a good first kind of answer. And obviously, you need to vibe with that person to a certain extent, right? There's so many different styles out there, how people do things, and get to know each other. And don't just pick the first person that says yes, right? Pick
Mm.
someone that you dig the vibe, like someone where you feel like that's like the advice they give, that's something I can work with and it's fitting my style. So I think those are probably the most general things I can say about this. There's certainly more to it, kind of how to action things for mentorship sessions and all those things. But yeah, I think that's like the general gist of what I would recommend to be.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because there, when I think about mentors, there's obviously other designers who are mentors, but there could also be just other people that have nothing to do with design. As a, you would learn a ton from them, you know.
Yeah.
And so it could be people in your life. It could be a trusted friend, a family member, somebody that has experience professionally. Because a lot of times, this is true, I think, for most professions. We've got a set of hard skills that we need to learn and understand. And obviously, a designer is going to help you there. But dealing with people at work, right? You could talk to anybody in any profession to understand power dynamics and how interpersonal skills and problems dealing with a difficult coworker and things like that are things that you could learn from almost anywhere. It doesn't have to, and that's probably not something you're going to learn from ADP list, I would imagine. It depends on the person, obviously. That's something that I think a lot of designers they forget that. And then even though this is when you don't have a job, obviously it's very hard to find people that aren't designers professionally. But when you have a job, let's say you're mid-level, junior, whatever, you have a job at a company, there are people at that company that you could reach out to that absolutely could become mentors if you're struggling, for instance, with, I don't know, you're struggling with understanding the business. I don't know, whatever. Everybody, well, learn the business. That's like advice everybody always gets. How do you learn the business? Well, you talk to other people that work at your company and you understand how the business works. So you could talk to the sales team to understand how they sell, the marketing team, maybe, I don't know, the customer success, customer support team, the customer experience team, whatever they call it where you work. those are things that, as a designer, your boss is never going to schedule that meeting for you, you know, but you can absolutely reach out, Teams, Slack, whatever you use. Hey, we're working on this thing. I'm struggling with this. I think your insights would be really valuable. Can we schedule 30 minutes to talk? And if you find that you hit it off, schedule another 30 minutes, schedule another 30 minutes, schedule another 30 minutes. And over the course of months, a year, however, you've now built a relationship with this person. You can probably ping them and go to them advice. They're probably more willing to be open and honest with you. And so these are things that I think a lot of designers, we're so stuck on the title of designer, and I only want to talk to other designers, and you're missing out all of that other stuff. And it's just relationships. Mentor relationship is a relationship like any other relationship. You could obviously pay to coach and you get an instant relationship because there's a transaction there. There could also be relationships that just paying with time. You know, you're talking, and I use this analogy all the time of the growing an avocado tree you want to have avocado toast for brunch. There's no shortcut there. It takes a very long time to grow avocados, and you got to plant those trees. You got to nurture you got to water the trees. They got to grow over time. Some of them might die. Animals might eat some of the avocados. So many things happen here, but you've got to plant it, and there's no shortcuts. I guess when it comes out, you could go to the store and buy an avocado from the store. Maybe this is another. Yeah. I'm like half analogies today. I'm not on it with the analogies, but anyway, maybe that's going to. I guess that example, that's going and paying for coaching. But anyway, I don't know. I just love that idea of thinking beyond that immediate, we're going to build a relationship tomorrow. I don't know if you have any thoughts, but I love that.
I don't think that analogy is too bad because if you put it into design, well, like the avocado in the store could just be too expensive for you. You only have money for the seeds and you have to grow
that.
yourself.
Yes,
I don't think that is as bad as you thought it is. Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I love what you said about picking people, for example, if you work in a company from different teams. So one of the first things I did when I joined the company I'm with now is I had a bunch of intro calls to people from other teams that was set up. But in those intro calls, I look for the people that vibe with best. And at the end of the meeting, I would say, what do you think? Could we set up a one-on-one just like monthly or something? So we keep in touch and exchange thoughts a little bit. And they all love that. And with every single one of them, I now have one-on-ones set up at least once a month. So there's people from customer success, people from engineering, people from sales, people from support. I now get to interact with and talk both private and work stuff about. So if there's, for example, something that I want to know for something I'm working on, like from their perspective, I can just run it by them casually without having to go through any business channel or whatever. And that is like, that nets so much because you learn so much. And the other thing that you shouldn't forget is, you can give back as well in that relationship,
yes.
right? Like they are also interested in what you are doing. Like they are interested to learn more about like how you design the product, for example, or how certain decisions were made in designing the product and all of that stuff. Never think of it as a one-way street there. Yeah, absolutely. I think, and again, it's relationships. This is also something where there are no shortcuts. Yeah, I can go to you and ask you, would you be my friend today? But like you might say yes because you're a nice guy, right? But obviously it would be better if we finished this chat and had a beer together and like just had a nice conversation. And there's the shortcut to that. You got to talk to people. You got to do the thing, and you got to be a good human in that case and like vibe with each other. Otherwise, there's nothing that can bring you there. And I think it's the same in the job search, for example. I always come back to this because this is what I mostly deal with juniors trying like in their job search. But you have to find also the company that you vibe with really well. That's a thing a lot of people forget. Like they are like, this job, that's mine. Like the job description looks so good. And then they have an interview maybe. And then I talk to them after that interview and they say, so yeah, like generally it looks all good. But like the person interviewing me was a weird. I don't feel, but I still think this is the job. And I'm like, hold on. Like, you shouldn't quit here, but let this be a little red flag. Like next interview, please check if you still think the people you're talking to are weird. Because if that's the case, that's going to go away. That's not something you just toughen up and get through it or something. This is the start of potentially a horrible experience for you. So please be careful. Make sure you vibe with them. And again, like no shortcuts there. You gotta get to know the people, gotta get to know the job, and then you find out if it's a fit. But basically in the current situation, like the thing that makes it so hard is so many people are desperate, which I get for many reasons, right? And they're just like grasping for straws. They just want to have something. and think, push through it. But there's like things coming out at the other end that definitely not worth that.
Yeah. Dude, absolutely, 100%. And we're talking a lot. We spent a lot of time just in the last 10, 15 minutes talking about mentorship and relationships. But I think the thing I want to like stress, and I think you'd stress this too, is that a lot of times these relationships unlock a lot of those other things that we're talking about, specifically around an understanding where you need to plug those gaps and fill those holes. And often it's very hard for us to do that self-reflection, because you use your portfolio as an example. I'm the same way. I'm self-taught. I never went to design school. So for me, learning visual design was a challenge 15, 20 years ago when I started. And if I look at some of the stuff I designed in like the early 2000s, it is awful. It is absolutely awful. But at the time I thought it was great. That's the thing. At the time, I thought it was great. And so if you're doing that self-reflection, having that relationship with somebody who is willing to be open and honest with you can help you identify those things that you do need to go and work on. And so I just want to reiterate that. I think that's so important. So we talked a lot about mentorship, but I just think that mentorship piece unlocks so much of the other stuff that we're talking about. It's so hard to do that. And also the other thing too that's interesting is I wonder how many people don't realize they're taking shortcuts. They just think this is the way to go. And leads me to the next thing I want to talk about, which is social media, the rise of TikTok and YouTube videos and short 30-second clips about UX design. I want to preface this because I have no problems with TikTok. People posting stuff to TikTok, it's great. I love it. It's wonderful. It's probably a great way to learn little tidbits and snippets of information. But at the end of the day, it's so compressed, it's impossible to really get too deep into the weeds and actually understand. I'm curious from your perspective, because I know we're both on LinkedIn and social media content and stuff. I'm just kind of curious from your perspective, how do you approach social media, or how do you advise people to approach social media when it comes to learning things? Advice there.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that's missing when you look at social media, because everything is condensed, even if you have a longer post on LinkedIn, that's still compared to an actual book on X, for example, it's like nothing, right? Like you can read it in 10 minutes and be done with it. It's lacking context. So someone throws you a strategy. Someone says you can get there by doing these 5 steps, and then they list 5 steps within a bullet point, basically. And you take this away and you think, oh, this is going to solve my problem, so I'm going to apply it. But first of all, you're very often missing all the details that you need to actually execute this properly. But it's also missing the context of what kind of situation do you need to be in for this to even work out in the first place. And like I said earlier, people are grasping for straws right now. So they are taking everything they find and just try to assess what is the one that probably gives me the best outcome with the least amount of time spent right now. And try to catch yourself doing that. If you feel like you're reading a LinkedIn post, maybe by me, that says these 5 steps are going to get you the job, take it with a grain of salt and just try to extract what actually might apply to your current situation. So I always, when I post, and I currently mainly only do LinkedIn content, and I have my newsletter over on Open Doors. When I do this, I always try to frame like who this is for and what kind of problem you might be facing that this solution is great for. And further, I try to like put disclaimers in for who this isn't a good idea. So for example, like I said earlier, when I like do mentorship, I have 2 groups. I have these career changers like myself or you, and I have university graduates. While they all have the same goal, they somewhat come with different kind of prerequisites in terms of what they have, like in terms of experience and skills. And so I try, when I talk about these strategies, try to make sure that I clearly point out if something would work better for a university graduate or for a career changer, and then also offer an alternative for the other group, obviously, if possible. But this is something like always try to put the things into context, into your own context, and see if that actually can apply and if this could actually help you right now. Or if you're just going down a rabbit hole, that's not going to lead you anywhere really just for you in particular. So I think that's the main problem of it. And I still do this myself. Like I still catch myself sometimes scrolling LinkedIn and nice I don't know, video or on like how to do a specific effect in Figma or whatever. And I'm like, oh, this looks great. Like I haven't done that before. Maybe I should. And then I'm like, is that even, what's the point to it? Sure, you can hone your skills, right? Like you can just practice a little bit and then maybe at some point it comes in handy, which is great, but it's a distraction. You probably have a goal right now. You probably have something that you really want to get done. You really want to get to right now. And rather look for things that actually help you get there. So when I like kind of write down things that I want to learn or do the next couple of weeks or months, I always check them against my current goals, like career goals or like side project goals, and see can they actually contribute to that, and then make a decision based on that. And that's mainly how you should approach content on social media as well, sometimes.
Yeah, and I love the idea too of just thinking about it as just like you do the boot camp. It's scratching the surface. You are never going to get a deep understanding of any discipline, of any topic by watching a quick 60-second video on YouTube or TikTok or wherever. And most people that you would talk to, content creators, I think are probably would be the first to admit this is meant to be not a deep dive. This is meant to be just a very cursory thing. And I think when you view that as, oh, I watched a bunch of YouTube videos, even if they're 20 minutes long, that's still just barely scratching the surface. And I think as somebody learning any skill, I can't watch a 20-minute video on YouTube about woodworking and claim to be an expert craftsman, a carpenter. You have to that same approach. And I think this is again where, that mentor can help level set, because it's like the Dunning-Kruger effect and you reach the peak of Mount Stupid, right? And you're like, I know everything there is to know. And it isn't until someone actually like shakes you and is like, wait, hold on, they realize you don't know. And it isn't to like anyone's fault, I don't think. I think it's just one of those things. The other thing you mentioned about context on posts, I think there's a lot of people that I love that do this, but the one I'm thinking off the top of my head is Aneta Kmiecic, who posts quite a bit about portfolios. And she always has a disclaimer. This is my experience. This is my thing. This worked for me. These are things I've seen work for other people. Be very careful with what you do and how you do it and what you're going to change in your portfolio. As someone who's consuming that content, I think on the lookout for stuff like that. Be on the lookout for people who are making these big, broad claims that you're going to get ahead in X amount of time. And just be aware that some of that stuff is just there to maybe sell you some shit. They're trying to sell you crap or something, which is nothing like that. But just be aware of that as the consumer, right?
Yeah, that's the thing there, right? If you, sorry to disenchant content here, I do it myself to a certain extent, right? But like very often, like you said, these are surface level things that kind of like hint at the solution, but they're actually meant to get you deeper and like actually end up with like you buying the product that this creator probably has put out. Usually it's a course or mentoring or whatever.
Which
That
isn't
would
itself
then
meant to be a shortcut.
exactly like it, but this might like, and that's the thing. So what I try to do then is like when I see that my like, content from someone resonates with me a lot, and like I see myself like reading this or even waiting for posts sometimes from people, for specific people, but obviously the content is still surface level, but that tells me that something tells me to go deeper there. Because I'm interested in this, and like they seem to attack a lot of problems that I'm interested in, I'm maybe facing. So go deeper and actually double down on that person then, and maybe look at what they have to offer beyond this kind of shallow surface content, and see if you can take a course with them or you can book mentorship with them. Those might just be the people that actually can get you somewhere without the shortcut. Because again, if you buy that course, you have to actually do it and take it and go through it. I'm definitely guilty of having bought courses that I didn't do. But then maybe the problem wasn't big enough at that point. But anyway, like it's okay to fall for that kind of content, but make sure to follow that. Make sure to ask yourself, why did this resonate with me? What might be the underlying thing I'm looking for? And can I maybe kind of dive deeper into it and get somewhere actually, instead of like doom scrolling basically, because that's what we end up with, right? But most of the creators out there, they offer more, and most of the creators I know offer quality stuff, like beyond the surface. They do. Some sell shit for sure, but like the people that I follow, and whenever I did end up buying something from someone, I didn't regret that, because like they had a promise, and for me they always delivered. Obviously, always check for yourself make sure you really know why you're getting something or why you're getting help. But yeah, explore beyond that surface level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the big thing to remember with all of this, any shortcut, is you only get out what you put in. And if you expect a shortcut and you just put in the bare amount of work, the bare minimum to get there faster, you're getting out what you put in. So don't expect some revelation at the end of a shortcut and this like sudden dose of wisdom somehow. You're only going to get out what you put in, whether that's a course, whether that's a book, whether that's even like a LinkedIn post. Because I will be honest, dude, like I've read like posts on LinkedIn and stuff. I'm not on TikTok, so I can't say I've learned a lot from TikTok, but like LinkedIn is an example. There are people that have posted and I have actually got a lot out of the 3,000 characters in a post, and it's an insightful post and it's great. And so I don't want to like diminish that. I think there are posts really great content. I think it's just you get out what you put in, and that's such an important thing to think about. So Florian, I've got a series of questions that I like to ask all my guests to help our listeners get to know our guests a little bit better. We've been talking to you for a little bit now. Before we get into those questions, any closing thoughts, any final insights on the idea of there are no shortcuts? Anything you want to let people know before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think the only thing, like the gist of all of this is reflect on what you're doing, why you're doing it, and make sure that your like, steps you're taking are actually leading you or have the potential to lead you where you want to go, and don't fall for any traps. Do a self-check-in every now and then and make sure that you don't fall for these shortcuts. And whenever someone tries to sell you something that says this is going to get you there in 7 days, doubt it and basically stay away from it, I think, in general, because at least when it comes to design, no matter if that's getting your first job, if that's getting a promotion or acquiring a certain skill, I think all of these things take time. They do by nature. And if you rush it, the best you're going to end up with is like some half-baked stuff. And usually that doesn't get you anywhere. Yeah. Check in on yourself and make sure you're aware of that.
I love it. Good stuff, dude. All right, man. So I've got a series of questions that I like to ask all my guests to help our listeners get to know our guests a little bit better. Something that comes to your mind, you don't have to think too hard about it. These are pretty simple. They're not meant to stump you. First up, what's your favorite non-design book?
Oh God, it's really hard to tell because so you didn't talk about this. I was a product manager, but before that,
Yeah.
I have a master's degree in German literature.
All right.
I've read a lot of books, but
That's
actually,
awesome, dude.
yeah, but actually, it's not like I can't settle for one book, but I do one author very much. I think it's probably even a little bit, I don't know, books to row. I do like Haruki Murakami, a Japanese author. He's quite big. I think it's probably most people or many people will recognize him. But like all of his works are really, I've never read a bad book written by him. And I do enjoy his work a lot. And yes, it's definitely a big recommendation, especially if you're
Right
into
on.
Japan and like Japanese culture. But even if you don't, if you're not, still a big recommend.
That German literature, huh? That was, isn't it?
Yeah, like I did study
Wow.
German and philosophy in my bachelor's and my undergraduate. And then I doubled down on German literature. I tried to get into academics, but then midway through the master's realized that academics are messed up, like in terms of working conditions and all that. It took me a while to realize that. But then I decided, no, I'm gonna go into tech, I think, and try to do that because I've always had an affinity for that as well. It worked out apparently. But yeah,
That's awesome, man. I could probably talk to you for an hour just about the transition from German literature to tech. That's an interesting transition, man.
yeah, that's a bit of that.
All right. Next up, what's your favorite non-design podcast?
Yeah. So listen to a lot of podcasts, but I think my favorite one and the one that I've been listening to for the longest time is Criminal. The host is Phoebe Judge. And I think NPR is the station that's putting it out. So it's basically a podcast about everything that has to do with, basically criminality. It's not like a normal true crime podcast or anything. They do cover some of these things as well. But very often it's also about law, incarceration, all of these kinds of things. And the host is just so nice to listen to. She's just got such a good voice, such a good talking voice, and you just like listening to her, no matter what she's talking about, really. But yeah, it's great content, and definitely check that out. It's a great podcast.
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, I've listened, I think I've only listened to one or two episodes of Criminal. but it is really good. The element of it is really good. I love that stuff. That and like
Got great
This
storytelling.
American Life and all that. They do such a good job. All right.
Exactly.
What is your favorite meal? This could be something you've cooked, something your grandma used to cook, restaurant or whatever. Favorite meal.
Tough one, but I think it's ramen because ramen just like
okay.
I think I've never ate bad ramen. I know there's supposed to be bad ramen, but I never had any, and it's just an amazing dish. No matter where I am, no matter where, like what city I am, what country I am, I like when I'm there for multiple days, I always try to find a good ramen shop there because that's it always makes me happy. And there's just something comforting about like a good broth and some noodles.
Yeah.
That's my
I love it, dude. Yeah, back in high school, I used to eat instant ramen all the time. It was like I would buy. Actually, it's funny. For Christmas, my friends and I, we did this was like 1999. We all had, I think, $10 to our names. So we were like, all right, we're gonna spend like $10 on each person. And like one of my friends bought me $10 worth of instant ramen packets, which at the time were like probably like 25 cents a piece. Anyway, it was like a grocery basket like full of ramen noodles. But I was actually older and I actually had real ramen. I was like, oh my God, what have I been doing my whole life? But yeah, the like actual ramen, like real. God, it's so good, dude. I love it with like the
But
egg
to
in
be fair,
it and like all the stuff. Yeah.
absolutely. But I still eat instant ramen occasionally. Not
Yeah,
only
for
occasionally.
sure. Oh yeah.
Quite often. It's still guilty.
I
of
love
that.
it, dude. Yeah, it's all good. No, I ain't gonna judge you for that. All right. What's your favorite vacation spot?
Yeah, so I'm based in Europe, so there's like a lot of nice places here, I'd
Yeah, a lot of
say.
places to go. I know.
But
Very
like
jealous.
vacation in particular, like I grew very fond of Greece,
Mm,
specifically the island Kos or Kos.
mm.
It's like a really nice spot. We try to go like every year, especially now I have kids, so it's easier than doing like a city trip or something. And so yeah, Greece is something like the food, the water, the
Oh, yeah,
beaches,
dude.
everything is just like spot on for me, like exactly the way I
Mm.
like it. And so I think yeah, that's my favorite spot.
Man, I'm so jealous. Yeah, I've never been to Greece. I would love to go to Greece. That's just it's on my bucket list. But
Have you
yeah,
been
the
to, like, let me think. Have you been to Hawaii, for example? Hawaii?
I've never been to Hawaii. No,
Okay.
far
Some,
away, man. Yeah, it's
yeah. But still, I hear for people in the US, it's a lot more accessible than it is for me. So that would be one where I'd be very jealous. Or I don't know, Mexico as well, for
I've
example.
been to
Like,
Mexico, yeah, actually. So I used to live in New Orleans, and it was like a 3-hour flight.
oh, wow,
It
that's
was like
perfect.
such a quick flight. There was actually a nonstop from New Orleans to Cancun, and if you look at it on a map, it's so close, man. And it was a really short flight. But like for Hawaii, I actually live in Cincinnati now, and for us to go to Hawaii would be almost as long as to go to Europe, and it would probably be
Okay,
more
that's
expensive
crazy.
because the tickets are more expensive, or the tickets are
Uh-huh.
about the same price from like Hawaii to Europe, and then but once you get to Europe, it's relatively inexpensive compared to Hawaii.
That's
So
true.
and like US dollars in Hawaii, it still doesn't go very far. But yeah, it's I know I'm jealous, but yeah, I actually no, I've talked to a lot of people who live like out in California, and they like that's like a relatively short flight there,
Right.
and the flights aren't nearly as expensive. But I got to fly like all the way across the country before I even get on a plane to fly all the way across the Pacific to Hawaii.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's anyway. One day, it's on my list. Greece, I'd probably go to if I had to pick, I'd go to Greece before I went to Hawaii. Honest,
Yeah,
but
you can definitely get a lot of bang for your buck in Greece, I think. Yeah, like
yeah,
definitely.
for
The
sure.
flight's still gonna cost you, but
Yeah,
everything else, I think it should be pretty affordable, especially compared to Hawaii.
yeah. I'm not sure there's anywhere cheap in Hawaii. Maybe like one of the tiny little islands or something is off the beach, but like the popular spots, no
Yeah,
way. It's like freaking
yeah.
ridiculous. All right. Last question. What is your favorite design tool that is not Figma?
Good question. Generally, Framer, I love how they
Mm.
revolutionized like the kind of like website builder and like making it quite seamless to go from Figma to something that's actually live on the web and actually also being able to leverage code. But not so recently, but for a while now, I've been working with a tool called LottiLab, which is
Mm.
Lotties are animation files.
Right.
And you used to have to like basically know After Effects, which is a hell of a tool, in my opinion, like an absolute
Mm.
hell. And you would used to have to know that in and out to produce these kind of animations. And LottiLab broke it down completely and made it so easy and approachable and
Ah,
like
okay.
such a low threshold. And ever since then, I've started like really crafting interactions and little animations for the product that I wouldn't have been able to produce like a couple of years ago without tools like that, because it would have meant that I would have had to double down on like After Effects, which
Right.
is a
Not
nice thing
easy.
to do, right? But it's not easy. And if I were to get into motion design, obviously I would have done that. But like I'm a product designer and I try to
Right.
have a generalist skill set. And this
Yeah,
tool
dude.
really opened that up for me. So I'm really thankful for it. And I think the guys deserve a big shout out, because I've been using that product for ever since they had their first alpha.
Oh,
They
wow.
approached me and I've been testing for them for a long time. And now they are like live and got launched a product hunt multiple times, got serious investment now. And I'm so glad for them, because they really deserve it, because they're an absolutely great tool that can do so much more. That's been pushing boundaries. So yeah, that's my favorite design tool that's not Figma.
That's awesome, dude. It's interesting because I come this back to the topic today, which is shortcuts. If you're a designer, right, you need to find a way to be able to do that thing and get that output as quickly as possible. It's not necessarily a shortcut, right? That's just a tool that helps you do a thing. But if you're a motion designer and you don't understand After Effects, there's a problem. So it's all like the context, right? If you're a
Exactly.
motion designer relying on something like Lottie files or Lottie to do that work because you don't want to learn After Effects, that's an issue. But as a designer, that's not, I wouldn't consider. So anyway, I don't know. I'm just tying that
Yeah,
back. It's just
yeah,
interesting because
no,
it's all about context.
that's really great. I love that you're doing that, because it sounded like I took a shortcut there, right? Like just getting a new tool that kind of makes learning all this stuff obsolete and makes me like put in less time. I agree. I think it's true. It is a shortcut compared to what it used to be, but the underlying things, for example, knowing what easy is, knowing how transitions work and like how motion
Mm-hmm.
generally works, I still have to know that, because if you don't do that, if you don't dig into that, you're still going to produce shit. Like even with this tool.
Right. Yeah.
And it's the same with Figma, right? Figma is so easy to learn. It is so much better than what we used to do, I don't know, 15 years ago when you do interfaces in Photoshop. Like
Mm-hmm.
Photoshop as a tool was like had such a higher threshold than Figma has. But still, if you don't know your visual foundations, if you don't know all of your kind of like UX stuff, UI stuff, you are not going to produce anything nice with Figma. So there's no shortcut for these kind of essential underlying things. And it's the same here with Lottie Lab. Like you still have to dig deep into what easing means and like how long an
Yeah.
animation should last and all of these things. That's still something you've got to learn. So yeah, they made it easier, but they did not take away the need to learn the essential thing.
I
Yeah.
love it, dude. Yeah, that's such a good takeaway. That is a perfect way to close out. I love how we tied it all back together. That's brilliant. So before we get out of here, Florian, let us know everybody. Gee, I can't talk today. I'm gonna start over. Florian, before we get out of here, let everybody know where they can find you. Give yourself a plug. They might want coaching. They might want some of your subscribe to your newsletter, all that stuff. Let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, so I think first of all on LinkedIn, just type my name, you should find me, and you'll also get a lot of those links there. But if you want to get my services and my newsletter, go to opendoorscareers.com and just subscribe for the newsletter. Check out the job board. We've got all the freshest junior design roles on there that are actually vetted. So it's not I'm going to put these kind of like crazy roles out there saying junior, but asking for 5 years of experience. You won't find that. You're also going to find a lot of internships and even apprenticeships, even though those are rare. But if I find them, they are on there. And yeah, also keep an eye out on the platform in general, because I've got a lot of stuff coming there that's going beyond the job board and the newsletter. So yeah, best way to stay up to date is probably by just subscribing to that newsletter. You're gonna learn a lot more about that. And yeah, I think that's covering it.
Right on. All right, Florian. This has been amazing. I learned a lot. I think a lot of other people are going to learn quite a bit about this. Their own shortcuts. Do the hard work. Get your shit done. Master your craft. I love it. All right, Florian. Thanks so
Exactly.
much, man. And we're going to include all that stuff in the show notes, by the way. So if you want to find Florian, check out, you can slash episodes, whatever. Just be on UXdesign.com. It'll be somewhere on there. Find the show notes, all the links to all this stuff. Subscribe to Florian's newsletter. Find him on LinkedIn. Follow him. All that good stuff. You won't be disappointed. Florian, thanks again for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
No worries. It was a pleasure. Thank you.